First, I'll say that I'll do my best to get through this. I truly want to thank all of you for being here to share with me the life of the best person I ever knew. Special thanks for those who have traveled great distances. Relatives from Virginia, 2 wives of Bill's teammates from the College of William and Mary, and the players whom Bill coached at the College of William and Mary. Everyone who is here today was and is special to Bill. Local golfing and fishing friends, former tennis friends, sales associates from the Wayne Watson Company and Russell Athletic, Bill's longtime doctor and family pharmacist who helped us battle Bill's Parkinson's and other health problems over the last many years, and our wonderful neighbors and golfing friends. I have known for almost 50 years that Bill was a wonderful person, but over the past few weeks, I've found out even more about how he touched the lives of so many people. His great character is reflected in many of you who are here today. Many of Bill's best friends, one of Bill's best friends sent me the following quote, and this one I might not get through. True friends are the ones who never leave your heart, even if they leave your life for a while. Even after years apart, you pick up with them right where you left off. And even if they die, they're never dead in your heart. I want to thank all the locals who are here for all their love and support over the many years, months, weeks, and especially the last few days. A special thanks to Martin Morris, who helped communicate with former players from William and Mary. Martin grew up in Lynchburg, Virginia, as Bill did, and went to EC Glass High School, and then played for Bill at William and Mary. Several people have asked if they could relate a few remembrances about Bill. Martin, you want to come up for a few minutes?
Well, it wouldn't be a few minutes.
I got my whistle, Martin. I got my whistle. Y'all get comfortable.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say it's just a great 2 days to be in Alexander City, Alabama. I love the South. We're from Virginia. I coached at the University of Tennessee. We came down here and fought those War Eagles. Some of you guys might remember Sonny Smith. Sonny and I are real good friends. And first of all, I'd like to recognize somebody in addition to Coach Chambers. And that's this young lady right here. So we stand up and give her a round of applause. Yeah, we've had a chance not only to coach as a coach, but a lifelong. We live in Atlanta now. We left coaching and came to Atlanta, and we had Coach come to Atlanta. We've been over here, and just going back, I guess, to my high school. My mom was a single mom, so coaches meant a great deal to me. And there's two people in my life. One was Coach Bryan, who Coach Chambers played for, and the other was, of course, Coach Chambers at William and Mary. And what two people could I've asked for to be a role model for me to follow in my life? We have guys who couldn't be here today, but I think we might publish these later. Like Betty said, it's hard to read their thoughts, but I mean, it's unbelievable how many lives he's touched. And you know, you talk about the statistics, 51 rebounds in a game, I mean, that's a memorial that he established, probably never be broken. Just when he was a high school coach, won in 3 straight state championships while he was there before he even came to William and Mary, which is sort of unheard of today. Then going to William and Mary. In William and Mary, we were always the underdog. We played in a gym about the size of this room. Some of you might remember the Quonset hut that Auburn played in when before they Bill. What was Bill's last name? Y'all remember Bill? That was the coach. Yeah, but the coach was Alec. Was it Bill? What was Bill that was the basketball coach when they had the Quonset hut? Anybody? All you young people probably don't remember that. Ease. There you go. So we played West Virginia, and VMI, University of Virginia, and Davidson, and other schools, but they wouldn't play us in our place. We always had to play in the Norfolk Arena or somewhere else. But in 9 years in the Southern Conference, he was in the finals 3 times. Every 3 years, I guess he could have a time to develop another team, and he was back in the finals. In 1965, we took West Virginia to 2 overtimes. And when he beat Jerry West, of course, is still around, but he called Coach one of the greatest coaches that he'd ever been playing against. And so those are the statistics, but it's the relationships, like Betty's discovered. But as you go through life, that's what it's all about. And I don't want to be too long. My wife, she's got a hook back there. I was going to say, try to be relaxed, because Betty on the phone, she said, now make sure the guys get a late flight back out of Atlanta, because, I can speak for about 3 hours. And then she said, you can speak about 3 hours. And then, if that's the case, we're probably going to have dinner at when? What time are we going to have?
Pretty soon.
Okay.
It's getting closer.
But my wife's here with me, so she told me to make it brief. But I had when you talk about character and integrity, that's what he represented. And there was a fellow who wrote a book about character. He said, The Road to Character. And David Brooks, the author. He says, you can't build character simply by reading sermons or following abstract rules. Example is the best teacher. Moral improvement occurs most reliably when the heart is warmed, when we come to contact with people we admire and love, and we consciously and unconsciously bend our life to mimic theirs. And we got Bill Jr. here, and I think he's mimicked his dad's life, and I think a lot of the players that played for him have, and I'm just glad he was there when we needed him, and appreciate the opportunity to come over and celebrate y'all's occasion. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Larry? Gail, he did pretty good.
I'm Larry Paffrath. I also played on the team that Martin was referring to. And first of all, I'd like to offer my condolences. I told Betty that I wasn't sure if I could keep my composure with this or not, but obviously it's not working. I asked Betty if I could follow Martin just in case I needed to apologize to everybody for how long he can talk sometimes. That's about the shortest talk I've ever heard him give. Thanks, Martin. I'd like to say a couple things about, what Coach meant to us. In the game that Martin referred to, William Mary is only one of, I think, 5 schools that's never been to the big dance, and we came the closest of anybody in the history of the school. And after the game, we're in the locker room, and every single one of us could remember something during the game where we screwed up. That's what we were focused on. and there were a lot of tears in the locker room, and Coach came in and lifted all off of us. He gave us a talk about responsibility, and I'll never forget it. It stayed with me my whole life. I've been in situations too where people screwed up around me, and it was a real lesson in leadership, is what it was. And he taught us about responsibility that day, and he took the responsibility for it. It's the kind of guy he was. The other thing I'd like to tell you about, again, responsibility. I screwed up big time one time at William Mary. I'm going to get into the details about it, but he had me in his office about my smoking. And it was, first of all, very clear to me that my scholarship was in jeopardy over it if I continued. But the main thing I remember from it is he gave me a talk about the health problems that it was going to cause me. And I won't get into the details of that conversation, but I never smoked again. And for that and a lot of other things, I thank him. And thank you for listening to it. Thank you.
Bob, I'm going to come back to you in a minute. Andrea, Alice, come back to you in a minute. Mel Long. Mel is local. Most of you locals know Mel. He's out of town. Mel's a golfing buddy of Bill's. Thank you.
Of all of Bill's friends from out of state, I think I'm the shortest. I don't know if you watched some of these pictures, but the ones that we saw at Radney's, I saw a picture of Betty and Bill at their wedding, and I saw a picture of Betty and her sister. I think you and your sister have the same hairdresser that you've had for 50 years.
It makes it simple.
Every picture I see of you. Oh, man. I've known Bill for 17 years. That's when we moved down here to Lake Martin. And in all those 17 years, I have not met anyone that didn't like Bill Chambers. Well, not everyone. There was one person. He's here tonight. In our golfing group, we played by a handicap system. And then it was really goofy the way we kept score, but we won't go into that. But Bill Chambers thought that the holes and where the handicap holes were marked was just not correct for the everyday group. Now, the guy that did this on the scorecard was a better golfer than the rest of us. So he thought the easy holes were marked as the high handicap holes, and the hard holes were marked as the low handicap holes. But Bill Chambers said, well, we're not that good. So Bill takes all the scorecards from our group for weeks at a time. He takes it home, he adds them up, averages them, and compares them to the par for the hole, and he came up with a whole new handicap system. Wow. And this person I'm talking about didn't like it. Did you, Steve? Like I say, he even made new scorecards. We didn't even use the scorecards that were in the pro shop, so that added salt to the wound. But anyway, Bill was just that kind of guy. He took charge of problems, and he didn't bitch about them. He did something about them. Now, when the old regime left the everyday group, And the new regime came in, and Bill was part of the new regime. Bill made an everyday group book, and this is it. The everyday group book. Bill made the book. Bill made the cover.
Wait a minute.
Bill made the...
He told me how to make it.
Wait. Bill's partner made the book. He made the score sheets where we record our score every day, and then we adjust it based upon how we did versus our quota. He even designed or came up with what we call the frozen rule, not named after Ralph, but the frozen rule. So if we get a new guy playing with us and he says, oh, I'm a 10 handicap and he's really about a 3, we don't allow that score to be posted for the betting. We have if he's 0 to 2 over or under, we give him a maximum of 2 over or 2 under. And that keeps the cheaters honest. Also, in the old system, we used a computer for recording scores. And some of our members didn't know how to use a computer, especially when they posted their low scores or didn't post them. But Bill's name is literally, or his spirit is written all over that book that we use, and we haven't really changed it that much. He also came up with we've got a section in there called rules. We got a section called guidelines. And the regime came up with the rules and the guidelines. But in recent years, I've been riding my golf cart around to Willow Point, just cruising around looking for things to do. And I would just drop by Bill and Betty's house, unannounced, because my wife would say, where have you been? Well, I've just been around. And I'd punch the doorbell, and Betty would come to the door, and she always had a smile on her face. Come on in. And we would sit down, and we would talk for the better part of an hour. We'd solve world problems. We'd tell jokes. We'd tell stories. And I think one of Bill's favorite stories, and if you've ever seen Bill laugh, Bill is not a gregarious laugher. He laughs with his eyes. Betty's like Ed McMahon. She's really laughing. But this story that I told him, apparently there was a father taking his 16-year-old son to the Department of Motor Vehicles to get his driver's license. And the young man passed the written test and the driving test, and on the way home, he said, Dad, I'm sure looking forward to you letting me borrow your car to take my girlfriend on a date. Go to a movie, go to the beach. The father said, son, when you get your grades up to a B plus or B average, and you start reading your Bible, and you get a haircut, then I'll consider you mature enough to drive my car. Well, 6 weeks later, this young man brings his report card, and he said, look, Dad, he says, I'm impressed. You got a B average. That's good. He said, and I've seen you've been reading the Bible too. He said, yes, I have. And that's good. He said, but what about your haircut? You know, your hair is a little too long. He said, Dad, he said, I noticed a thing or two. He says, you know, Moses had long hair. Samson had long hair. In the New Testament, John the Baptist had long hair. Jesus had long hair. And his dad said, son, did you notice that wherever those guys went, they walked? That story just reminded me of Bill. I'm sure he's had stories to get his ball players straightened out. Quit smoking, that's good. I got one more story that I think is true. There's only one person in this room that can tell it's not true. So just to believe this is true. Bill and Betty got married, and Bill was standing at the altar, the preacher on one side, best man on the other. The music starts playing. Betty comes walking down the aisle, and she gets to the altar, and she notices that there's a golf bag and golf clubs behind Bill. And she says, "Bill, what is that?" He says, "This is not going to last all day, is it?" That happened, didn't it?
It's close.
It's close.
I'll tell my side of the story.
Yeah, you tell your side. That's funny. Let's see, there's no other. I know all of you have seen that movie, It's a Wonderful Life. And if you recall, there's a scene in that movie where this young lady says to George Bailey, she says, "I sure am glad I know you, George Bailey." And I say, "I sure am glad I knew you, Bill Chambers." We're going to miss you.
Bob, Andrealis, did you want to? Well, you said you wanted to tell a story.
Right.
I
I've been telling stories about Mark.
Oh.
Hello,
You
my
got-
name is Bob Andrealis, and I had the privilege of
being on the team with Martin and some of the other people that were here.
I was a substitute, to say the least, but Bill kept his faith in me, and I'm not sure I ever recognized, or he ever recognized the true talent, but anyhow. As the former gentleman just said, Bill was not gregarious, and certainly from a basketball perspective, which is the perspective that I can share, he certainly wasn't gregarious. I mean, laughter was not part of his shtick. But there is one joke that I told, one true story that I told Kiki last night. That was one of the funniest lines I've ever heard, much less coming from Coach Bill Chambers. I think it was 1964, the William Murray team was invited to play in the Sun Bowl in El Paso, Texas. And it was part of a whole week of festivities, culminating with the Sun Bowl football game. And we played, at that time, Texas Western, which became Texas at El Paso. And 2 years later, beat Kentucky in the NCAAs, and they were the NCAA champs. And then they became Texas at El Paso. It was New Mexico State and TCU, Texas Christian University. So we were there we played 2 games, played reasonably well, lost them both by 10 points. We were oversized. We were undersized. They were really a lot bigger and stronger than we were, but we played well. And we played Texas Western, and 2 years later they won the NCAA with some of the same players that we played against. And on the way, so we spent probably 4 or 5 days. We had a lot to do, just 2 games, a couple of practices. We went into Juarez, had a great time. On the way back, we're flying back from El Paso to Dulles. And we're all sitting in, I don't know, a block of seats. And Coach Chambers comes back and says, "I have never been on a 2,000-mile shopping junket before in my life." As there were a couple of players, one of them is here tonight, Ron Chambers. They're wearing the sombreros and the straw hats and the necklaces and the this and the that. Everything was pretty cheap in Juarez, and we took advantage of it. But I sat back. I didn't buy anything, and I didn't have any money. But it was one of the funniest lines, from his standpoint, my standpoint. It was the funniest line I've ever heard him say, and it was pretty funny to begin with. It belonged on Seinfeld. Anyhow, he was a wonderful guy. His spirit lives on. This is a wonderful celebration. And Betty, my condolences to you, everyone here. But he'll be missed, and he'll be remembered. Thank you.
Cliff Flag, local. For those that are out of town, Cliff local.
You know this quote we all made of sickness and health, better and worse. There's your best example. A lot of us have witnessed her devotion to Bill on a daily basis, and it was amazing. Anyway, Bill's one of two or three guys, when Sarah and I first moved here, that kind of adopted us and indoctrinated us into Willow Point and Alex City, because we didn't know anybody. The Kennemers were the first to introduce us down here, and we'll never forget their help with us too. But Bill Chambers, we've talked a little about his love for golf. The only thing I remember about his golf, the thing I remember most about his golf game is his amazing hands. I mean, the rest of us couldn't make a ball bite from 100 yards with a wedge. He could have a 20-foot pitch and make it hit like a cat with sore feet. I'm telling you, he could make a ball bite better than anybody I've ever played golf with. And he was an integral part of our daily group, but on weekends sometimes, Kennemer and David Hall, Ralph Roche, and Jim Roy and I, some combination of the four of us would have a private game. And we always played 6-6-6. We were all each other's partners for 6 holes. The only time I ever heard Bill cuss on the golf course, Jim Roy and I were partners the first 6 holes. Kennemer was there. And Jim birdied 5 of the first 6 holes. And I birdied the other one. So we had him 6 down after 6. And Bill, he used some of his 4-letter words that day. But the thing that a lot of you don't know about Bill is, I really think as much as golf, he loved to fish. And y'all know, since I retired, we bought and sold several farms. And Bill Chambers probably has been to my farms 100 times over the last 15, 20 years. And we'd always work for 3 or 4 or 5 hours, and I'd have to pour water on him and get him to quit working. I mean, he was a workaholic when he'd get to our farm. We spent an hour each way in the truck too, so you really get to know somebody that way. Then we'd fish, and Bill just loved to fish. Now I remember 2 quick stories about his fishing rods, because he's very meticulous. You know, everybody knows he's a tinkerer, re-gripping clubs and relining his reels and what have you. Well, we had a floating dock. We'd have to use my tractor as the water fluctuated in the lake to push the floating dock out or pull it back in. Well, I didn't know, but I went and got the tractor, and Bill laid 3 of his favorite rods down next to the floating dock. And I let the bucket down to push him and broke all 3 of his rods. He didn't speak to me all the way home. We replaced those, and we left our fishing equipment down there one weekend. We came back, somebody broke into the storage house and stole all of our fishing equipment. But I went over the other day with Betty to go do inventory on it, and there was 20 rods and reels in his fishing room. So he still had plenty left. But Frank Burns was real good to take Bill fishing the last few years. I had a lot of fun fishing with Bill Chambers, and my sons and I had been down to South Georgia, and for some reason we got in this pond and we just caught big bass after big bass after big bass for 2 days. The very next week I took him in our plane and flew him down there, and the second cast he caught an 8-pound bass, and you couldn't get the smile off his face for a week. But he and I and Frank have had a lot of fun fishing. And the thing I'll say about Bill, somebody said nobody's ever said anything bad about Bill. In all my traveling with him in hundreds of hours, I've never heard him say anything bad about anybody else. He's one of our true Southern gentlemen. I don't miss him so much. Thank you.
Frank, did you want to? Frank Burns, that Cliff just mentioned. Bill's another fishing buddy, golfing buddy.
This is a little bit of a follow-up on what Cliff said. Years ago, before I moved to Alex City, I lived in Dothan for a couple of years. I became friends with an older gentleman who took me fishing one day. I'll never forget something he told me that day. He said, "Frank, you'll have a lot of friends, but you need to be very particular about who you choose to fish with. Bill Chambers is a guy you want to fish with."
We have a summer place in New Hampshire, so I was on Silver Lake, New Hampshire yesterday morning and left at 5 a.m. to get to Logan Airport. But thank you for all of us that played for Coach, and we've been here to Willow Point before, but we want to thank you for the way in which we've been received, and it's a real honor. I'm going to be very brief and just tell you a recruiting story that is rather unique in the world of basketball recruiting. I went to a private school in New York State for high school, and my coach was a math teacher, didn't know anything about basketball. We didn't learn much, but he was pretty good on getting the right players on the floor. So I wasn't recruited to play basketball anywhere. My senior year, I went home for spring break, and my parents, Pittsburgh was our home, and my parents had never been to Colonial Williamsburg. So it was spring break, and they said, we're going to Williamsburg, and we'd like for you to go with us. And so one of my sisters went with us. The four of us went to Williamsburg. We'd never been there, and we toured Colonial Williamsburg, and we stayed at the Williamsburg Lodge. And so I, as a 16-year-old kid, I wanted to, just have some fun. So I went across the street to the Golden Horseshoe and the Spotswood course, and I was going to, go play 9 holes of golf. Well, I walked into the pro shop, and there was a gentleman there that started asking me some questions. He saw my height, and so he just started asking me some questions about who I was and where I was from, and I obviously told him. So I went out and played my 9 holes of golf, and when I came in on the 9th hole, there was a man standing on the practice tee hitting practice shots, and came up to me and and introduced himself and told me that he was the basketball coach at William & Mary. So that was the beginning. I paid $100 to Allegheny College in Meadville, Pennsylvania. That's where I was going to school, and they have yet to send my $100 back. But that was the beginning of my life at William & Mary. And without having seen me play, he reached out to me and said, "We'd love to have you come to William & Mary." I think he had a lot to do with, I'm not sure what happened behind the scenes with the director of admissions, but I'm thankful to this day for the opportunity to play for him, and respected him so much for the man he was. And it's just interesting how little things in life can change your direction. I met my wife there at William & Mary, and we celebrated our 50th anniversary last month. So great things can happen with great people, and he was absolutely one of the absolute best.
Anyone else like to say a few words? One thing I want to say, obviously there's some players that would like to have been here today, but I heard from Charlie Woolham, who played with these guys, or a little after or before. Charlie also coached at William & Mary and still lives in Williamsburg. But Charlie Woolham and Walter Wink, another player, are meeting this week with some of the people in the athletic department at the College of William & Mary, and they are working to fund a Bill Chambers Memorial Basketball Scholarship. And we may be back in touch with you. It's been real special to have all of you here. I'd also like to thank Claudia Isaac and all of the staff at Willow Point, the work with the villas and the work with the luncheon, the staff that served our lunch in the kitchen, It's made it a very beautiful occasion for all of us. Ron or Bill, did either of you want to say anything? Okay, Ron Chambers, another, come around the edge. But I do want to thank all the folks here at Well Point while Ron's walking up.
You left his sombrero at home.
Okay. Maybe he needs another shopping trip.
Another part of that, on that flight, we went to Charlotte to play Davis. Airlines lost my baggage. So the only thing, and we had to play Davis. And it was over New Year's Eve. And all I had was the clothes on my back and my sombrero. And I never got my bag. My name is Ron Chambers, and I'm not a basketball player. Well, I really am, actually. Quite a good one at that. But I was William & Mary's first student trainer for basketball. And Coach Chambers, gave me a scholarship for that, a little scholarship. And so with these other guys, for every game and every practice, my whole college career, I was always there. And I didn't have a father either. My father died when I was very young, and I was a long way from home. And Coach kind of looked after me. I mean, my name was Chambers, so but he did kind of look after me. I mean, he got my grades and gave me, monitored them and got on me when they weren't so great, and warned me about the evils of, women and drinking and smoking. I mean, he really kind of took care of me. And he was a very serious guy, as some of the other guys have indicated. When it came to basketball, he was fair, but he was a serious guy. Well, one time we were playing Virginia Tech up at Virginia Tech, and we would love to beat them, and it was a really close game, and we were ahead most of the game, and there was this guy, and they had an arena, kind of hockey-like, and we were down there, and there was this guy, Tech fan up there with his wife and kids. Every time we'd have a timeout, get up, and he'd yell down at me and go, "Beetle, you Beetle," because my hair was kind of long, and then a lot longer than the kids at Tech had their hair. So I kept doing that on and on. So after a while, you do that, I just point to the scoreboard where William & Mary was ahead. And he was furious with me. But in the end, they beat us. We got in foul trouble and they beat us. And so I'm getting the stuff off the bench. And I mean, it was a heartbreaking loss for us. I mean, Coach would love to beat Tech. And so I'm getting the stuff off the bench, and here's this Yahoo again out there pointing at the scoreboard and saying, "Hey, you little queer," it's like that. And so I got really mad, and there was a water bucket with a towel there. So I just picked it up and walked over there, hit him right in the face, and it wrapped around, and off I went. And as I was running, I realized I had the keys to the dressing room. And so when I got to the dressing room, here are all the players and Coach out in the hall, disappointed, mad, and here Ron's out there throwing towels at the, Tech fans. And Coach really yelled at me, because I had the keys, so I got the keys, we got in there, and as always in those days, it was a long trip back to Williamsburg, and we had to go back that night, get back at 3 a.m. And we, coaches drove the cars. And so I had to ride with Coach, in the front seat beside him. And I was pretty nervous because I screwed up badly. And we're driving through the night and stuff, and the other guys were in the back seat. We had these station wagons we traveled in. And about an hour and a half into the trip, Coach Chambers said, after saying nothing, we'd stop and get a soft drink and some nabs, and then on to Williamsburg. And Coach said, "Ron?" "Yes, Coach?" "I'm sorry I yelled at you back there." Well, that made me feel good, but all the guys back there, the players heard that. And Coach never told them he was sorry about anything. So for the rest of the time, they always said that you're the coach's pet. Ron, you're the coach's pet. They called me the coach's pet. And actually, I think I was. Thank you. But he was a very generous guy. And one last little thing is another one of the players, a guy named Bob Etzke, died last year, unfortunately. And he was my roommate and one of my best friends in life. I was with him when he died. But and he was a pretty good basketball player, very aggressive guy. But when he got to college, he met a woman and fell in love. And before his junior year in the summer, he got married. And they had a baby, and they had a wonderful marriage, and were married until he died. But he began to sort of lose his interest in basketball. But he was a poor kid from industrial town in Ohio, and he was just basketball was kind of waning for him because he wanted to go to med school and stuff. So Coach recognized that and called him in and said, Bob, you're not that, you're kind of losing your fire for basketball. We can't have that. He said, well, I know, I try, Coach, but I can't. I want to go to med school, and I got a baby, And he said, why don't you not play this last year? Bob said, well, I have to play because I can't go. He said, no, you can keep your scholarship. You can keep your scholarship and not play. Well, he went on to med school and worked for 35 years for the National Institute of Health as a scientist. So Coach Chambers did have those sides too, and so it's very important in my life. We have the same name, and I didn't have a father. So thank you.
You guys can help me with one story. I believe it was Walter Wank that had the labs in the afternoons. Is that correct, Martin? Larry? This was in one of the articles that was written about Bill. And again, it says something sort of like what Ron just said. Young man went into Bill and said, Coach, I've got to miss a lot of practices because my professor, I have a lot of labs in the afternoon. And even if I finish my work, my professor will not let me leave to come to practice. And, he's expecting that Bill's probably going to bench him or whatever. And Bill said, if your professor says to be there, you be there. And he started almost all the games. And again, Bill recognized education was why they were at the College of William and Mary. And I thought that was a great story. I think I've hit everything. Is there anyone else who would like to say something? Yes, Hamp. This is Dr. Hamp Green. Hamp has been Bill's neurologist since 1994 when he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Thank you, Hamp.
This has been a very special day because I didn't know any of this about Bill and Betty. I can remember when they first came into the office together, right away I knew I liked these people. I didn't know anything about them, nothing about basketball, Coach Chambers, anything, but just two likable people. And as you know, Bill had a lot of difficult, painful problems he had to deal with, particularly with his spine and complications and surgery of that. But the one thing I never saw a hangdog look. I never heard, why is this happening to me? And he couldn't have had a better wingman than he did, because she is, the two of them are just were ideal couple, and was a great honor and privilege to be one of his physicians. And thank you for sharing the Bill Chambers you knew with me.
Thank you. This has been great. I think a lot of you know that after all the years, it was a relief Bill is in a better place, but he had a lot of special friends, a lot of special young people that played for him, and I still call the team that comes back his boys. They're a little older than boys. Bill's tennis partner from Atlanta, Frank Cairns, they started playing tennis together in the 70s. All our local friends have meant so much to me. The wives of two of Bill's teammates from the College of William and Mary are here, and it's just been super special to have everybody here. I want to thank everybody. One thing I also want to say, those of you who are out of town, please do not lose touch. Bill is gone, I'm still here, and I want to hear from all of you. Our lives together are not over. So thank you all for being here and helping me celebrate Bill's life. That's it.